Well, hello, folks. Good morning to you. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. I'm coming to you live from an undisclosed location somewhere deep in the heart of North American flyover country. And apparently, some people are so unsophisticated that they can't understand that that's kind of a cute little funny joke, a cute little funny way to enter into a show. And they're all upset about why you're saying you're from a undisclosed location. What do you have to hide? And to them, I just say, get a cunt out of my face. Don't be silly. Don't be stupid. We're having a little bit of fun. We got some serious business to do here. So every now and then, we like to have a little fun and we like to do a little silliness, and that's part of it. And I am coming to you from an undisclosed location, and it is deep in the heart of North American flyover country. So, as Rocky Stucci would say, shut up. So, ladies and gentlemen, I get a lot of flack about a few things, and that probably doesn't surprise you. But one of the things I get the most, it's not flack, but I get a lot of people that are, they see their Christianity coming undone. They watch this channel. They see that they can no longer support the things that they've been taught, and they get upset and they get worried, ladies and gentlemen. And one of the things that they immediately gravitate to, and I see it probably at least three, maybe 4 to 5 times a week, this idea that Paul was defended by Peter, the Apostle Peter. So I get that so much, I felt like it might be a nice time, and I am battling the cottonwood trees in the heartland. Boy, they are coming out, ladies and gentlemen, and they have some pollens that this Florida boy is not accustomed to. So I'm fighting a battle with the cottonwood tree. The cottonwood tree is obviously demonic. It's trying to silence the voice of your Christian whistleblower. So a little hot tea is in order, but I want to take you through this. I'm going to show you where they're saying that Peter was defending Paul, and it's really exactly the opposite, which shouldn't surprise you. And I also want to show you in Galatians why it's just complete lunacy, complete idiocracy that Peter would be defending Paul, because it just never would have happened, and I'm going to show you the reasons why. But first of all, ladies and gentlemen, I want to show you a couple other things. One thing I did learn in Bible college was that a text without context is a pretext. And the text quoted is in 2 Peter, that they say Paul is being defended by Peter. Lou Machado, nice to see you. And Galatians chapter 2 gives you the context of that situation, because they don't know about it because they've never been told. But if we understand when the books of the Bible were written, ladies and gentlemen, the thing in 2 Peter and the thing in Galatians becomes very, very interesting, because we understand the context of it. We completely understand the context of it. Galatians was written about 57 AD, give or take. First and Second Peter was written in 66, sometime between 60 and 66 AD. So what people are reading in 2 Peter, those people are already aware of what happened in Galatians because they were there and it happened and they saw it and they heard it and they understood it. And I'm going to take a little liberty and license today to kind of give you an idea of I'm going to give you some context. And I'm going to use my book, Apostle Paul, Antichrist. This was the first book I wrote, and I'll put it on my website if you want to get the book, Apostle Paul, Antichrist. And I'm going to use it. It is a historical novel. If I had it to do again, I probably wouldn't have made it a novel. But it puts the biblical story of Paul being the first Antichrist, or the first oppressor of the message of the Christ, the first opponent of the message of the Christ, into a novelic way so you can understand it. And I'm just going to read from it a la Scotty Roberts. I'm on page 186 of Apostle Paul, Antichrist, forward by George Norrie of Coast to Coast AM. He's wrong about everything else, horribly so. James and Peter both looked shocked. They exchanged a puzzled glance. James leaned in. What exactly do you mean? Well, it almost seems like Paul is using the message of Jesus to draw people in. And then when he has them, he veers off into a message of his own making. The man was picking up steam now. James led him. He nodded for him to continue. Well, fact is, he's omitting most of the message we were sent to convey. This is Barnabas. Peter exhaled and sat back in exasperation. Judas continued. Instead, he preaches a message that is outright contradictory. Peter jumped up, running his hands through his hair and pacing in circles. James, stunned, leaned forward. Perhaps there was a misunderstanding. What? James paused and enunciated slowly for emphasis. Exactly is Paul teaching? His eyes followed Peter as he stomped around the room. James could tell the hulking fisherman was making Judas nervous. Fearing another delay, he said to Peter, "Will you please sit down?" Judas continued haltingly. Well, for instance, he's teaching that it's permissible that we eat meat sacrificed to idols. He took a paper from his satchel and began to read from it. I copied this down myself. Paul says that idols are nothing at all. It doesn't matter if we eat meat that's been offered to them or not. He encourages people to buy and eat without question. Peter couldn't help himself. That's exactly the opposite of what we decided. James was fuming. Please continue, he said. It seems as though the only part of the apostolic letter he consistently remembers is to emphasize the exhortation to remember the poor and the accompanying offerings. He hesitated, then spoke up again. He often takes multiple collections, and there's no accountability. He alone counts and holds the funds. Paul had been sent by the apostles. He came and sat with them for a short time. He'd been sent by the apostles out to deliver a very specific message. He was delivering a message exactly the opposite of that. So James, being the diplomat that he was, sent Peter personally to go out and look into the situation with Paul. Peter went and looked into this situation with Paul, and what happened was this. I don't know if you've read this before or not, but let me share it with you. So Peter, they get these bad reports. James sends Peter, the big fisherman, out to talk to Paul in Antioch. And here's what happened. You know what? I'll read it to you from the scriptures first. When Cephas came to Antioch, however, I opposed him to his face because he stood to be condemned. That's Paul talking about Peter, who is Cephas, and we'll show you right here. Peter, the name given to the apostle Peter. So when Peter came to Antioch at the behest of James to corral Paul, what did Paul do? Paul opposed him to his face. He said against him, he withstood him, he resisted, he opposed, he stood opposite, he stood against, he took a complete stand against, he took a contrary position. He publicly and conspicuously got in the face of Peter, saying that Peter needed to be blamed. Folks, Peter was a hulking fisherman, big guy, strong guy. Paul was probably a dwarf, probably a hunchback, very physically unattractive. And he is publicly to the face in front of a church confronting Peter. And this is how I relate Peter's report back to James when he came back. James, I swear to you, this is Peter speaking, it took every single ounce of restraint and good thing within me not to twist that bulbous, misshapen head off his dwarfish body. Peter was back from Antioch. He was telling a tale that even James, in all his suspicion, couldn't have guessed. If he hadn't done it in front of the entire congregation, Peter continued, blindness would have been the least of his problems right now. They were alone, so James let Peter vent. He shamed me. He shamed you. He shamed the entire council in front of them all. That Roman dog, that Herodian farce. He stopped himself, took a deep breath. James just waited. Give him time. Men of God, after all, are still men. After several deep breaths, Peter spoke again. Okay, I'll be all right. I feel much better. I'm not likely to kill anyone now. Thank you. Peter embraced James. He drew back and looked deep into his eyes. This is serious. Listen to me, Peter continued. The man's completely mad. He's touting himself as a true heir to your brother's legacy, speaking of Jesus. So with that understanding of what happened and that little bit of artistic license that I took to give you a more fuller perspective of what happened, let's understand that this happened before before Peter wrote 2 Peter. So we know that Peter had been withstood to the face by Paul in Antioch. We know that Peter had been condemned by Paul in Antioch. And now we're going to take a look at what Peter had to say about Paul. And this is just a little while, folks, after this thing happened in Antioch. And this is the one that people want to tell me, oh, Jeff, you're wrong. You're obviously wrong. You're a demon because Peter supported Paul. Let me show you what they're talking about. And I think it's very clear, very easy for anybody that wants to know the truth. And let's just be honest. A lot of you that come to this channel, you don't really want to know the truth. You've already got your mind made up. So I don't know why you come here to confuse yourself with the truth. You just want to fight me. You want to be at odds with me. Maybe it makes you feel better to say bad things about me. I don't think about you any longer than the time it takes for me to hit the delete button. I'm being very frank with you. There's way too many good things and way too many good people for me to be worried about you. Very rarely do I want to go all Peter on somebody's ass. Very rarely. So this is in that context that we can consider the words of Peter about Paul. And he says, therefore, beloved, as you anticipate these things, make every effort to be at peace, to be without spot or to be without blemish. So Peter's saying, let's live right. Let's live holy. Let's be good people. Let's not have spot. Let's not have blemish. And remember, and this, of course, is King James, so it's a bit tainted. And remember, the Lord's patience brings salvation, just as our beloved brother Paul, who also wrote to you with the wisdom God gave him, he writes this way in all his letters, speaking about such matters. Some parts are hard to understand, which ignorant and unstable people distort as they do the rest of the scriptures to their own destruction. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to go right to the original Greek, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go right to the original Greek. And we're going to look at it, and we're going to tell you exactly what Peter was saying about Paul, and it ain't what they've been teaching you at church at all. So, and of the Lord of us, patience and salvation. Why do you think Peter was talking about having patience? Because the guys he was writing to understood full well how patient Peter had to be not to kill Paul. So he mentions that need for patience. And then we're talking about this word salvation, which isn't salvation as we think about it, but it's be well, be safe, be prosperous. So what Peter is saying is, hey, I know firsthand we got to use patience. If we want to be prosperous, if we want to be safe, if we want to be divine and sovereign and free. So esteem yourself. Think highly of yourself. And then he goes into this and he says, and remember the example. That's what he's saying. Remember the example of our beloved brother, Paul. After what just happened in Antioch. And let's look at the words he uses. He says, I want you to remind you of our beloved. Why didn't I get the right Greek on that one? I want to remind of beloved, loved, to be divinely loved, to have agape love, to be super deep in love with. Do you really think after the events in Antioch that Peter really loved Paul? Folks, it's called sarcasm. Folks, it's called satire. He was ready to kill the fool. So he says, remember our beloved. Remember, he's talking about having patience. So remember how our beloved brother, and he goes out of his way to use this word adelphos, which means a member of the same religious community. And Paul was not a member of their religious community. Paul had left them. He had separated from them. He had gone away. So Peter's obviously employing fantastic sarcasm. My beloved, it's like me talking about my beloved friend, L.A. Marzulli. My beloved friend, Lynn. I don't know what the A stands for. Oh, my beloved friend, Lynn. My beloved friend, L.A. Marzulli. You guys know exactly what I'm doing. Who's part of our community, and they knew he wasn't. So Paul is employing tremendous sarcasm here and satire. Our beloved brother who's with us, when they know that he didn't love them and they know that he ain't with them. Now, watch this. And according to the wisdom he's been given, and this was a point of controversy between Paul and the apostles. Paul said he had got his own special wisdom from God and didn't need to check in with the apostles. The apostles are like, dude, we walked with him 3.5 years, day, night, 24/7. You need to come to us. Not to mention, the only way to be an apostle was to have been with Jesus from the beginning. Paul wasn't. Why are you calling yourself an apostle? You weren't there at the beginning. So what Peter is saying is this guy, beloved, our dear brother, is out there preaching his own wisdom. His own wisdom. He's writing to you his own wisdom that he says God gave him, but didn't give us, the real apostles. And then he goes on. And in all the letters, he writes, and actually this word writes, look what it means. It means to chatter. Peter says, in all his letters, he's chattering, like chattering. Not a dignified word, chattering. In all his epistles, Paul's chattering concerning these things, which are difficult to be understood. This word is the key here. Dysnoeta. What does dysnoeta mean? Peter's already shown you he's using tremendous sarcasm. He didn't love Paul. Paul wasn't one of them. Sarcasm. He was already showing that Paul was preaching his own doctrine, not the doctrine of the apostles. Sarcasm. He's already exhorted them to be patient, as he had to be, not to kill him. But here's the key, folks. This word, dysnoeta, it's translated in the King James hard to understand. There's a reason it's translated in the King James hard to understand. And it's not hard to understand why they translated it hard to understand, even though that doesn't even remotely approach the meaning of the word. But I'm going to show you. I recommend to you that when you're reading books that you know contain disinformation, that not only do you look at the word and the definition given by the quote unquote, scholars, quote unquote, but you look into the words that it comes from. Now, 1425, they're saying it means difficult, and it comes from 1418 and 3539. So if you really want to understand 1425, you got to understand it's 1418 and 3539. And it's really easy. All you do is click on this. What does 1418 mean? Okay, this is the first half of the word. Missed, misjudge, nullifies good, increases bad. Okay, so the first part of the word that Peter used to describe Paul was unrest, misjudge, nullifies the good, increases the bad sense. And then the second part of the word, perceiving, thinking, understanding, considering, conceived, apprehend, possibly realize. So what Peter was saying is that Paul And this is right out of the Greek. Paul was misjudging. Paul was nullifying. Paul was increasing bad what? Bad thinking. Paul's perception was warped. Paul's perception was jaded. Paul's perception was busted. Paul's ability to think was warped and broken and jarred. Ladies and gentlemen, in plain English, Peter was saying, that brother crazy. That brother's crazy. Our dear beloved brother, our great friend, is crazy as hell. That's exactly what he's saying. And you can see that from the original language without any addition from me. So he's teaching things that are crazy as hell. And those people that are ignorant, like some of you are, but you're not anymore, because watch what ignorant means. Ignorant means unlearned. You didn't know that Peter said Paul was crazy as hell. Now you do. You didn't realize that the scriptures show Peter saying Paul is crazy as hell, but now you do. So guess what? You're not ignorant anymore. But it's not just the ignorant. It's also these folks right here, the asterictoi. What about these people? These people, they're unstable. These people are unsettled. And let me give you a little secret, ladies and gentlemen. Just because you used to be ignorant and you get information, you're not ignorant anymore, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to take the next step and become stable and settled. Because a lot of you get more asterictos by the day because I keep knocking the legs out from under your religious hobby horses. And instead of admitting and seeing and understanding, instead of realizing that you've been ignorant and now you're getting new knowledge, instead of accepting it, you continue to be unstable and you continue to be unsettled, and there's nothing I can do about it. I can lead a horse to water, but I can't make him drink. I can lead a donkey to objective truth, but I can't make him think. So Peter says, Paul's crazy. And those that don't know and those that should know better distort these teachings. What do? They twist. They twist the teachings of the other scriptures. And what does it bring about? It brings about their own destruction, their own loss. It brings about their own loss. It brings about their own loss, ladies and gentlemen. Be diligent. Be patient. Walk in peace. Be blameless. Don't kill a fool for being a fool. Consider the long suffering of me when I felt like I wanted to rip his head off and spit down his neck. Remember my long suffering when our beloved brother Paul, with the wisdom given to him but not to us, is talking craziness in his epistles. Remember this. Remember that it's the ignorant and the unlearned and the unstable that are using his scriptures to distort themselves and lead themselves to destruction. Beware, lest you also get led away with the error of what? Of the wicked. Who are we talking about? We're talking about Paul's teachings. Don't get taken away by the error of the wicked. He called him wicked, straight up, cousin. Don't fall from your own steadfastness. And I didn't show you that. I want to show you that again. I want to show you that. Come on, work with me. Work with me. Let me show you that just in closing. I just talked you through it, but right here's where he says, these people, don't be like them. Don't be led away by this error. Error of what? Paul's teaching is what they're talking about. This is error, Peter says. Don't let this wicked, what's wicked? Paul's teachings. Don't let this wickedness take you from your own steadfastness. Cousins, it doesn't get any plainer than that. It doesn't get any easier than that. It doesn't get more understandable than that. You just can't make it any plainer and easier. Peter called Paul crazy as hell. Peter said Paul's doctrine will lead both the ignorant and those that continue to stay ignorant to their own loss, and encouraged us not to be stupid, not to be unsophisticated like these guys that are following the false apostle Paul. It can't be made any easier. It can't be made any plainer. And Ryan quotes Paul, being crafty, I caught you with guile. Paul said that. Being crafty, I caught you with guile. Wow. Quickly into the chat room. I am watching Hopi Prophecy. Good for you. Being crafty, I caught you with a guile. Would you say we're watching scripted prophecy right now, Jeff? Abso-damn-lutely. You can ask anyone that hears these truths if I'm crazy. Wasn't it ironic that Paul said, let the ignorant be ignorant? It is ironic. He is tricking us with words. Unindoctrination is a process. Cognitive dissonance is strong in this one. Paul's so-called conversion, Charlotte talks about. Great point. Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Scholarly prejudice. 2 Peter, yes, 2 Peter. KW says Peter was the one to preach to the Gentiles, not Paul. Well, Paul was kind of loosely considered the apostle of the Gentiles, so Christianity is a money-making scheme. I tried to explain that this man, beloved, did need air quotes. This is why, Kay says, she comes to this channel. Thank you so much. Thank you, Joe Blow, Ricky. Never thought I'd hear those words come out of my mouth, but thank you. Bless you, brother. I just led your channel today. Thank you, Kelly Spirit-Filled Wood. So glad to see you. So glad to see you. Wow, nice reading of the Bible. How about that? Hence his Napoleonic tendencies, talking about his lack of stature. You think Peter took Christ's message and put his twist on it? No. No, I do not. Being a parrot is comfortable. It really is. Don't be judgmental. Well, sometimes you just got to slap a fool. Sometimes you just got to slap a fool. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. It's really simple. It's really easy. Don't get carried away by the false apostle Paul's craziness. As Jack Nicholson said in As Good as It Gets, go sell crazy somewhere else. We're all stocked up here. That's what I recommend. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian Whistleblower. We're here to help try to get you to ask questions and question answers. We're here to help you guide your own spirit, master your own ascension, be your own guru. I believe that we're the last generation of real humans, and I believe we can be the next generation of new gods. Go to jeffreydaugherty.com, subscribe to this channel, like this channel, get your Mistech bracelets and your fluffy. It'll change your life. Read about it on the website. We can be anything we want to be and all that we're meant to be if we'll only unindoctrinate ourselves.